A specific sort of quiet only lives within your home. Not the quiet of tedium, nor the kind that seems vacant, but the quiet that seems like safety. It's that sensation when you notice the far-off hum of the fridge, the gentle tick of a clock, and grasp that just this once no one requires you to be someplace else. This isn't loneliness. It's peace. The majority of people won't grasp that. They see a person who enjoys being home and presume they are antisocial, detached, perhaps even fearful of the world. Yet for certain people, home is not a retreat from life. It is the single place they can truly breathe. Since out there, amid the sound of endless comparison, demands, and performance, they misplace themselves. At home, they rediscover who they are. Perhaps it began when they were younger. The schoolroom, the bus, the throng, locations brimming with noise and disorder. For some, those areas felt like endurance tests. You needed to talk louder to be noticed, feign more to be included, and smile broader to appear fine. Thus, they constructed an internal world instead, a world that was gentler, slower, more compassionate. That is when home evolved into more than a location. It turned into a sanctuary. Experts say individuals who love being home frequently have high sensitivity to outside stimuli. This implies their brains register the world more profoundly. Harsh lights, strong sounds, excessive conversation. It can seem like a deluge. Thus, the quiet of home is not avoidance. It's equilibrium. It is the nervous system declaring, "Here, I may rest." But let's be truthful. It isn't just about overstimulation. There is something deeper, nearly spiritual regarding it. Home is the one location where we can remove the facade, the public version of ourselves, the one that grins on cue, the one that understands what to say, when to chuckle, how to belong. That facade can at last dissolve once the door shuts behind us. And what remains? The genuine, unrefined version, the one that has no need to impress anybody, the one that simply is. It is odd, is it not, how an individual can be encircled by people all day yet still feel invisible. But the instant they are home, seated by a window with tea, they at last feel visible to themselves. That is the silent magic of solitude. It is not isolation, it's closeness, but with one's own soul. We frequently idealize extroversion in our society. We praise those who are perpetually busy, perpetually out there doing, posting, achieving. We regard silence as if it's dubious and stillness as if it's idleness. Yet there is a silent strength in people who understand how to be alone without feeling lonesome. Since they have learned that contentment isn't just found in clamor, sometimes it is discovered in the intervals. An old adage says, if you do not go within, you go without. For individuals who love being home, going within is not avoidance, it's alignment. It is how they handle emotion, heal from overstimulation, and reconnect with what is true. Consider this. When you are perpetually encircled by people, your identity begins to splinter. You turn into a version of yourself for every audience. Yet when you are home, you are the single audience that counts. Naturally, there is a thin line between solitude and retreat. Even the most inward-focused souls require connection. Yet, here is the paradox. Individuals who love staying home frequently have more profound relationships, not shallower ones, since they refuse to waste energy on trivial connections. They desire the type of bond where quiet feels easy, where you can sit with another for hours and not require filling the air with talk. It's presence, not pretense. When researchers examine solitude, they discover something intriguing. People who spend more deliberate time alone often score higher on metrics of creativity and emotional intelligence. It is not because they are more intelligent, it's because they are introspective. They work through their feelings rather than suffocating in them. They watch their own thoughts rather than fleeing from them. In that quiet, concepts form, clarity appears, and emotional injuries silently start to mend. Reflect on the moments you have had your greatest insights. They likely did not arrive when you were at a packed party or adrift in a loud cafe. They arrived in the shower late at night in your room, or on a peaceful walk when nobody else was nearby. That is the secret power of staying home. It provides your mind the quiet it requires to talk clearly. Yet here is what's ironic. Numerous people who love being home bear a hidden guilt over it. They feel as if they are missing out, as if life is occurring someplace else, and they are not managing to keep pace. Social media exacerbates it. Ceaseless pictures of parties, journeys, and grins make homebodies feel they are doing something incorrect. Yet the reality is, the highlight reel of other individuals' lives is not the complete story. Everybody is pursuing peace, and for certain people, peace simply resembles staying home. There is something profoundly human in requiring a place to withdraw, to pause, to reset. In olden days, monks went to mountains or caverns to meditate. Now people do it in bedrooms, reading nooks, or small apartments full of plants and music. It is the same urge, the necessity to come back to stillness after the disorder. The home is simply the modern temple. And here is the psychology driving it. When you are at home, you are in what researchers term a low-threat environment. Your body ceases producing as much cortisol, the stress hormone, as there is no necessity to defend or perform. That is why your thoughts frequently feel sharper at home. That is why you abruptly get emotional when you are alone. Your guard lowers, and every feeling you have been repressing at last comes to the surface. It is recovery masked as quiet. Yet not everybody comprehends this. At times, people will utter things like, "You must get out more," or "You are squandering your youth." What they fail to grasp is that being home does not mean doing naught. Some of the most significant growth occurs there. Reading, pondering, writing, dreaming. These are all silent revolutions occurring behind closed doors. And the individuals who love being home are not necessarily shunning the world. They are preparing for it. They are recharging, reconstructing, recentering. And when they finally step out, they carry calm instead of chaos. There is also a psychological solace in routine. The brain adores predictability since it lessens anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the area feels familiar, your mind unwinds. For a person who loves staying home, this predictability turns sacred. It is not monotony. It is emotional regulation. Each object, each tiny ritual, from lighting a candle to brewing the same morning coffee, becomes a method of informing the nervous system, "You are safe now." Still, in a world fixated on productivity, that sort of stillness seems rebellious. We are told that to be valuable, we must ever be visible, ever doing, ever achieving. Yet people who love being home silently challenge that notion. They show that meaning does not always derive from motion. Sometimes it derives from stillness, from being grounded enough to perceive the rain tapping on the window, from possessing the time to think profoundly about who you are becoming. And perhaps that is why homebodies frequently possess a rich inner world. When you spend sufficient time in solitude, imagination begins to blossom. You start to see connections others overlook. You perceive the poetry in mundane things, the manner sunlight strikes a wall, the way dust moves in the air, the sound of faraway laughter through thin walls. There is beauty there, silent but certain. It is a slower type of happiness, one that requires no capture or sharing. Some individuals will never grasp that sort of contentment. To them, quiet feels weighty, and solitude feels like a penalty. Yet for those who love being home, quiet is not vacancy. It's music. It is the sound of at last being enough. There is a lovely paradox concealed inside people who love staying home. They are frequently labeled as aloof or remote. Yet the truth is, they experience life too profoundly. Every chat, every sound, every look, it all leaves an impression. And when the world grows too loud, their impulse is not to flee it, but to safeguard their own peace. It is not fear of others. It's care for themselves. You can discern much about a person by how they manage their space. Some individuals' homes are filled with light and music, plants reaching toward the window, the air warm and serene. Others favor low lighting, plush blankets, the subtle aroma of coffee or candles. Every home becomes a reflection of the person within it, a physical embodiment of their emotional condition. The quiet ones construct warmth, the dreamers construct comfort, the thinkers construct order, and inside those walls they fashion worlds nobody else ever witnesses. When researchers examine the connection between solitude and creativity, they find something deep. People who spend more time alone frequently report higher degrees of originality, empathy, and imagination, since solitude affords them the liberty to hear their inner voice, unfiltered, unbroken, unjudged. When you are encircled by people constantly, your thoughts adjust. You begin thinking in public terms, formed by how others may perceive it. Yet when you are alone, your thoughts emerge in their natural form. And that is where true creativity commences. Consider all the great artists, authors, thinkers, and inventors. Many of them cherished solitude, not because they hated company, but because they required space to think, to dream, to grapple with their own ideas. Virginia Woolf once stated, "A woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction." But that reality applies to all humans. We require a room of our own, figuratively or literally, to comprehend who we are. Individuals who love being home have learned that the exterior world does not define them. They do not need the noise to feel alive. They do not need ceaseless validation to know their worth. Since when you spend sufficient time with yourself, you cease pursuing the acclaim of others. You begin constructing peace that nobody can remove. Yet solitude can be challenging. When the diversions wane, the thoughts get louder, and at times that is uncomfortable. That is why not everyone can remain at home for long. The quiet begins to mirror back what they have been avoiding. Yet those who accept that quiet learn something potent. That peace is not the lack of thought, it is the acceptance of it. They learn to remain with their own emotions, to observe them arrive and depart without fleeing. That is emotional maturity in its most genuine form. And this is what psychology informs us. That ease with solitude is one of the most potent indicators of self-awareness. People who can appreciate their own company have a more secure sense of identity. They are less moved by peer pressure, less reliant on outside approval, and more led by internal values. Since when you have spent sufficient time in silence, you can perceive the difference between your own voice and everyone else's. That is how wisdom develops. In quiet places. Naturally, it isn't that people who love being home never get lonely. They do. But their loneliness possesses depth. It is not the ache of vacancy. It is the yearning for connection that feels authentic, not hurried. They would prefer being alone than being encircled by people who make them feel unseen. That is not arrogance. That is discernment. And when they finally find the right individuals, they love profoundly, quietly, wholly. Since they understand the value of energy, they provide attention carefully, affection deliberately, and trust gradually. And that is why their relationships frequently endure, since they are built on depth, not clamor. Yet there is another aspect to all this, one that is less discussed. At times, people fall in love with home not because they are peaceful, but because they are weary. Weary of being misunderstood. Weary of the world requiring versions of them that do not feel authentic. For them, home is the single place where they do not need to perform. It is not escapism. It is recovery. Experts call this emotional decompression. It is what occurs when you have spent too long feigning. When you arrive home and feel the abrupt need to lie down, to do nothing, to just exist. That is your body at last exhaling. You have been holding your breath all day, handling impressions, controlling emotions, stifling reactions. And the instant you pass through that door, everything you have been holding falls to the floor. That is not idleness. That is healing. Individuals who love being home frequently live with an amplified sense of empathy. They soak up other people's moods like sponges. They perceive tone, body language, minor changes in energy that most overlook. It is a gift, but it is also draining. Thus, they withdraw to replenish themselves, and that withdrawal permits them to return to the world calmer, kinder, and clearer. The more you examine this, the more you grasp being home is not just about preference. It is a personality rhythm. Some individuals are wired for outside stimulation. They flourish on movement, interaction, chaos. Others are wired for introspection. They flourish on pattern, rhythm, and peace. Neither is superior. They are merely different methods of being human. Yet because society lauds constant motion, the quieter types frequently feel like something is wrong with them. In reality, they are just tuned to a different frequency. There is beauty in that, since the world requires both, the ones who pursue and the ones who reflect, the explorers and the observers, the ones who create the noise and the ones who listen for meaning within it. And frequently, it is the listeners who assist the world in making sense of itself. They are the ones who convert chaos into understanding, noise into narrative, diversion into depth. And perhaps that is why so many authors, philosophers, and artists feel most alive when they are home. It is not that they are fleeing the world. It is that they are attempting to feel it more profoundly. They transform solitude into art, stillness into clarity, and quiet into creation. Their homes become extensions of their minds, a physical canvas for their thoughts. Each tiny detail bears intention. Every corner holds memory. Yet even for those who are not artists, the psychology stays the same. Home is the area where we process life. It is where we sift through the emotions we could not show outside. It is where we come back to ourselves after being too many versions for too long. And that return, that homecoming, is one of the most crucial psychological necessities we have, since no matter how far we journey, the reality is, everybody needs a safe place to land, a location where they can drop the armor and just be. For some, that location exists in people. For others, it exists in silence, four walls, and a warm light. There is something holy about those who select stillness over spectacle. It requires bravery to say no to noise, to step back from the ceaseless need to be seen, and to find worth in invisibility. Since in that invisibility, something remarkable occurs. Authenticity returns. You begin to live not to impress, but to express. You begin to see life not as a contest, but as a conversation. And abruptly, the walls that once felt restrictive begin to feel like wings. That is the hidden psychology of people who love being home. They are not fleeing life. They are embracing it differently. They are perceiving it, feeling it, honoring it at a slower tempo. They are not running away from the world. They are fashioning a version of it that feels humane once more, a version where the heart gets to breathe. And when they step outside, when they at last do decide to go out, they carry with them something rare, calm energy. They do not add to the noise. They carry stillness like a present. Since once you have found peace in solitude, you cease looking for it in chaos. You cease demanding that others make you feel at home. You carry home within you. Thus, if you are someone who loves being at home, do not apologize for it. Do not let the world persuade you that peace is unproductive or that comfort is complacency. You are not missing out. You are tuning in. You are doing the internal work most people are too busy to perceive, and that work, quiet as it appears, is what forms everything else. Since when the world feels unsure, when people are seeking meaning, it is frequently the quiet ones who have already found it, not in crowds or noise, but in the soft rhythm of everyday days, the warmth of morning light, the gentleness of evening rain, the sound of your own heartbeat in the quiet of a room that at last feels like yours. And that is the beauty of it all. The home is not just a structure. It is a reflection of peace acquired, not given. A sanctuary constructed from patience, presence, and authenticity. It is where you meet yourself repeatedly until one day you grasp you were never truly alone. You were just returning home to yourself. At times, people presume that being home means you have given up on life. Yet often, it means you have at last ceased running from yourself. There is an odd peace that arrives when you no longer feel the compulsion to pursue every invitation, every trend, every weekend plan that offers fun but provides exhaustion. You start to realize that joy does not always require witnesses, that the best moments occasionally occur in total silence. The sound of rain striking the window, the aroma of something baking in the oven, the way the light travels across your floor at 4 p.m. You start perceiving details you once missed, the way your heartbeat slows when the world outside is far off, the little satisfaction of doing something at your own speed, the way your mind opens when it is not perpetually battling for space in the noise of others. It is not isolation. It is a reunion with your own mind. And still, even in that peace, there is an undercurrent of guilt. Since we live in a world that praises visibility, where being seen feels identical to being alive. If you are not posting, if you are not out, if you are not joining in the collective hurry, people presume you are fading away. But perhaps fading from their sight is how you return into focus for yourself. Perhaps quiet living is not about vanishing, but about at last existing without performance. At home, you learn that solitude is not the lack of connection. It is the reset button that makes true connection possible. You start to see that not every friendship requires daily updates. Not every dream requires an audience. And not every day requires being productive to be meaningful. There is beauty in the unseen life, in moments that nobody applauds, in progress that only you can sense. And perhaps that is the secret. People who love being home are not running from life. They are walking toward it slowly, deliberately, without the noise. They are rediscovering what it means to just be. Not to impress, not to achieve, but to feel. Since at times the most courageous thing you can do is nothing whatsoever. Just sit silently in your own company and grasp that at last you are enough.